Welcome to the latest episode of B&B Movie Reviews. There's no new Star Wars movie, but there's plenty of Star Wars television. Me and Brad are here to break down and talk about Season 2 of The Bad Batch with heavy spoilers, so you've been warned. Stick around, B&B is up next.
Tell me something, Crosshair. This new empire, are we making the galaxy better?
We're soldiers. We do what needs to be done.
You know what makes us different from battle droids? We make our own decisions, our own choices. And we have to live with them, too.
After a mission gone wrong, Commander Cody questions his position in the new empire, having a crisis of conscience over the choice he's made and having to live with those choices, challenging Crosshair of the notion that a good soldier just follows orders. All right, so this clip that we just watched for The Bad Batch, this was from episode 3, which was the solitary clone. And this was an interesting episode because the first time that we've seen Crosshair since the end of season 1. And the first time we've seen Commander Cody since, I guess, Clone Wars season 7.
Yeah, timeline-wise, Revenge of the Sith. So, like, the last thing that Cody had done was turn on Obi-Wan Kenobi.
So it's interesting to see him come back in this, and then ultimately where this episode leaves Cody, because he tries to diffuse a situation, and ultimately a life is lost, and he starts to question his position now, and he ultimately ends up going AWOL. And but I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about this episode. I think was the beginning of us starting to see the overarching story for The Bad Batch. But with these episodes being 16 episodes, you get a lot of side missions, a lot of filler episodes. And there's been a lot of conversation week to week as we go through this series, and it doesn't focus on the overarching story. But now that the season is over, I look back at some of those episodes, and a lot of those episodes that we call filler really inform the characters. And I like that it really, even though it doesn't continue the narrative of the story, we still get character moments that inform and develop the characters more.
Well, I think that's what The Bad Batch has over a lot of other types of Star Wars media right now. The Bad Batch is all character, and those so-called side quest episodes are progressing the arcs of every single member of the Batch. In my opinion, Star Wars animated is where it's at. This is where stories are being told. Fewer people are watching, probably,
Unfortunately,
But I would encourage those that are at all interested in the live action stuff to go and explore The Bad Batch, because it is about drilling down into these big ideas. That's what Filoni's Clone Wars did. It took these big ideas introduced in the prequels and then said, well, what does that actually mean? What would life as a clone actually be like? You've been bred for war, and then your war is over and you're tossed away. What happens? How do you feel?
I love those conversations that the Clone Wars and Bad Batch is having with that. It reminds me, we talked about this with Andor, where you take these stories and you place it in our world, as far as dealing with certain things that we're dealing with in societal issues that we're dealing with in our world. And stuff like with the clones is very reminiscent of maybe how we've treated soldiers coming back from Vietnam. And I think Dave Filoni recognizes that and is having a real conversation about that. And to do that, like you were saying, in an animated show, it's compelling and riveting to see, and I kind of appreciate the approach of telling more of these personal stories within like the grander universe of Star Wars.
Right, and for the greater Bad Batch, the Squad, Clone Force 99, most of them turned their backs on the Empire and fled and are mercenaries now. Crosshair, he chose the side of the Empire. You know, he betrayed the group, or as he sees it, the group betrayed him. And he's all about orders. This is what we are here for. This is what we are all about. And then this season challenges that idea. It uses Crosshair very sparingly throughout the season. But when Crosshair pops up in these just sprinkle of episodes, they are big deals. And Crosshair is going through it in this episode.
And I love it because this is episode 3 from this clip. And I think this is the beginning of the transition that we start to see, because he's pretty dogged as far as like his beliefs and what he believes as far as like a good soldier just following orders, especially after the end of season 1, and he still separates from the rest of the Bad Batch. But I think this is the beginning of him, you're starting to see a crack in the armor. And I like seeing that, and then we'll definitely get more into Crosshairs, especially when we talk about a later episode, which I think is probably one of the best episodes of the season.
But you know, this series, it's taking place almost, especially the first season's taking place immediately after the execution of Order 66 and the rise of the Empire, right? So we're at the darkest moment in the Star Wars timeline that we're aware of as longtime watchers of Star Wars, right? There might be darker times, you know, going backwards. We're going to explore every corner of Star Wars on Disney Plus at some point. But like, this is the darkest moment. And we know that there is light in the distance, but it's way off. And so it's fascinating to explore what it means to be a morally good, you know, individual in the most corrupt, awful, and hateful environment.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach to it as well. I wanted to go a little bit back to the filler episodes that we were talking about, and the character of Tech, which we know what happens to him. Again, this is a spoiler.
It's a spoiler show.
So we know what happens. If you haven't
watched the last episode of The Bad Batch, stop watching us, go watch it, and then come back. But here it is. Tech dies.
Tech dies, and we'll get more into that as we get later in the episode. But I just thought that it informed the characters a lot with some of those filler episodes. But with that, we are going to take a break, and we're going to come back and continue this conversation on The Bad Batch. So stay right there.
Each year, there are more than a dozen significant tropical and winter storms that threaten the East Coast. So chances are there will be more hurricanes and blizzards near here again. And between school, sports, and social lives, chances are you won't be with your kids when it happens. Will they know what to do? Ready.gov/kids has all the educational tools and information to make the conversation easy. When the time comes, chances are they'll feel prepared, not scared. So talk with your family today.
Don't get into trouble without us.
Without us?
Best of luck, Echo.
Luck with what?
I'm going with Rex. The clones will need our help now more than ever. I can't turn my back on them.
You can't leave. We're a squad.
Omega, this is something I have to do. I'm going where I'm needed.
But we need you too.
It's not forever. I'll be back.
Omega learns that Echo is leaving the squad to join Rex to go and fight for clones who have been displaced by the Empire, leaving Omega saddened that her only sense of a family bond is being separated from her. Bryan, you were talking Echo, right? And you're talking about how these episodes, these supposed filler episodes, are progressing character throughout the series. And that's evident in that clip, right? You know, the first season, the Bad Batch are trying to just make it in this Imperial galaxy, and they're struggling. but they're also hearing notions of people rising up against the Empire. And so we're starting to see just the kernels that will lead to the rebellion. And Echo can no longer just be a mercenary. He needs to join up with his pal Rex and fight this evil in the galaxy.
He can't be on the sidelines anymore.
Right. Yeah. So, emotionally, you engage with the fight that is going on inside every single one of the members of Clone Force 99.
I agree, because the thing is like Rex is seeing this throughout, because like you say, again, talking about these side missions, he's seeing everything that the Batch is doing with Sid now, and Sid is a character we'll talk about a little bit later as well, but they're kind of doing these jobs for her, and she kind of knows something about them, so she's kind of like using that as leverage against the Batch to kind of do these odd jobs. But Rex is seeing, not Rex, Echo is seeing that, there's a rebellion starting, and also that there are other clones out there that need our help. And it's just like, there's got to be something more than just doing these jobs to get credits. It was like, we got to do something more. And once he's able to get up with Rex, he's like, this is what I'm called to do. I can't keep doing what I'm doing now. This is what I'm called to do. And I love seeing that
and
arc
the struggle that is for Hunter as the squad leader, whose entire purpose has been to keep his squad together. And he's already lost Crosshair, and the idea that he's going to lose Echo is painful. And Omega, as the young clone of the group, she just does not understand why Echo would leave. And Echo is such a great teacher to her in that moment. So you also see the rebellion beginning in her heart in that scene.
Yeah, and they do a great job of setting up that relation between Echo and Omega in the beginning, so that when this split does happen, it continues across multiple episodes. And there's episodes, I just want to look at here, the next episodes after this one, because this was Truth and Consequence, which is about halfway through the season. So then when we get to the Crossing and Retrieval, this is when they go on another side mission for Sid, but Echo is still dealing with the fact that Omega is still dealing with the fact that Echo is gone. And this also gives us more character moments with Tech, because it's how are they dealing with the loss of Echo? And there's a great conversation between Omega and Tech as far as like how they process their emotions, their feelings, and how they deal. And Tech even tells Omega, it's like I do miss Echo, but it's just the way that I process it is different than how you're dealing with it. And I think it's also a good teaching moment for Omega as well.
Absolutely. So much of the conversation around Star Wars right now is devoted to The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And, the third season of The Mandalorian there's been a lot of ups and downs, and there have been a lot of these like side quest episodes.
Yeah.
The difference between The Mandalorian and The Bad Batch is that we don't know what the heck is going on inside Din Djarin's head. In The Mandalorian, what is he thinking?
Yeah.
Honestly, what's Bo-Katan Kryze thinking in The Mandalorian? They are playing so much with the mythology and trying to create this mystery box around The Mandalorian's many, many little plot threads that they are losing the central characters of their story, and we don't have access to them. And The Bad Batch is doing the opposite.
Absolutely.
It's making the focus what is happening inside the members of the Bad Batch, the turmoil that they are going through. No,
and I agree, and they do a great balance of that, because like you say, I think in The Mandalorian, it's becoming too plot-driven and not story-driven and character-driven. And I think that's why we start to lose a little bit of that interest, because like you were saying, we can't get inside Din Djarin and Bo-Katan's head to see how the plot is affecting how they're perceiving how
I need conversations in The Mandalorian. I need more conversations amongst the characters about how they are feeling.
Yes.
And The Bad Batch is all feelings.
Exactly, because like if we get moments like the conversations that Tech and Omega have after Echo leaves, if we have something like that in The Mandalorian, I don't want to keep harping on The Mandalorian, but I mean, it's just compare and contrast, because those two shows were kind of airing at the same time. But if we have more conversations like that between Bo-Katan and Din Djarin, and understanding what they're going through as they're trying to take over Mandalore, whatever the case is, I think it would just make us as an audience more interested in their plight and their journey of what what they're looking to achieve.
And it's not like the Bad Batch doesn't have some really great butt-kicking action sequences in it either. And, the whole Gunji, Wookiee, Jedi stuff is so much fun in the Bad Batch. If you are a fan at all of the Clone Wars, I think you're probably watching the Bad Batch, but you better be watching the Bad Batch.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's continue our conversation on the Bad Batch. So stay right there. We'll be right back.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
He served his purpose as a soldier of the Empire.
You could have saved him.
Perhaps you didn't hear me. He is expendable. As are you. And if you speak to me again with such disrespect, I'll see to it you meet a similar fate, clone.
Crosshair is at a crossroads when Lieutenant Nolan refuses aid to the clone Mayday after Crosshair risked his life to get him back to the outpost for help. Brad, this episode, Outpost, this came towards the end of the season, and this is easily my favorite episode.
I mean, it's a moment, right? Like, it's a big moment.
And in the first segment, we talked about Crosshair, and I want to talk about Crosshair because, again, we talked about how in episode 3, that was kind of like the beginning of you starting to see the crack in the armor, of him starting to see a little bit of what this empire is and kind of breaking that idea of a good soldier just follows orders. And when he gets assigned to this outpost, he meets up with a couple other clones and Mayday, and then they go on this mission. And this was the heartbreaking thing about that episode is they go on this mission to retrieve this cargo, which is basically the armor of the stormtroopers who are ultimately replacing them.
Yeah.
Dude, I love this episode. What are some of your thoughts?
I mean, it's a fantastic episode. It's a fantastic scene. It's a heartbreaking scene.
Yeah.
The clones, their purpose has been completed as far as the Empire is concerned. They are just property to the Emperor.
Yeah.
And Crosshair is starting to realize that his life means very little to his bosses. And he strikes out, and he is going to be punished for striking out. And Crosshair is a character that throughout the first season, I was very conflicted about. Do I empathize with this guy at all? Or he's doing some really heinous stuff. He is a killer. He is a bad person.
Yeah.
But he's also the product of this tyrannical system. And so when he does finally, strike against it in just a tiny fashion, you feel like, about darn time, let's keep this going.
Yeah.
But then the Bad Batch season 2, it's got more punishing emotions to throw at you.
It does. Crosshair is such an interesting character. And again, to this episode, I want to talk a little bit about Kevin Kiner. I don't think enough, at least from what I see, enough is not being said and talked about Kevin Kiner as a composer. Now, he's been composing Star Wars television, mostly animated, since the Clone Wars.
Yeah, he's great.
Clone Wars, Rebels, Bad Batch. I believe he's doing Ahsoka live action.
Yeah, he's going to get a feature, too, with the Dave Filoni film.
Great, because he needs to be doing all the features for Star Wars, because his music, specifically in this episode, and how he brings the emotion from the character, especially through the character of Crosshair, specifically in that scene, is just phenomenal, the way he's able to orchestrate a lot of this music. And I just wanted to highlight some of his contributions to Star Wars, because you know, people talk about, especially on the film side, they talk about Giacchino. Giacchino is great. You know, and John Williams is the GOAT.
But he is picking up the baton of John Williams. You know, John Williams' vibe is living within in Kevin's score, and they do need to be celebrated. I'm glad you pointed them out. We also have to throw some love, though, to the voice talent of D. Bradley Baker, voicing every single clone character. You know, there are scenes where the only voice actor present is D. Bradley Baker, and he's got 7 people in the room. It's astonishing to watch. When you really think about it.
When you look at the talent and the creativity with all the artists putting the show together, and D. Bradley Baker, that's his name,
D.
right?
Bradley Baker,
he was recently at Star Wars Celebration, and they had their Bad Batch panel, and he said that this episode, Outpost, was his favorite episode of the season.
Understandable.
Which is definitely understandable. But where Crosshair goes from here, now they retain Crosshair, but now they're using him for something. Do we know what that is?
Well, I think both The Mandalorian and The Bad Batch are exploring what the Empire is doing with clone technology. We know that the Empire will bring the Emperor back through clone technology. They'll bring Snoke into the world through clone technology. So both The Bad Batch and The Mandalorian are laying the groundwork for the First Order. But it does also seem like it's going to be a rockier road for the Empire, because it's also very factioned, if you've watched the latest episode of The Mandalorian. I think there are still a lot of surprises of how we are going to end up getting to the First Order and who is really going to be critical to the First Order's creation. But the Bad Batch, it's, you know, they want the Clone Force 99 because they're a unique strand of clone DNA.
So I'm curious to see how all of that is going to play out in the next season of the Bad Batch, and how it will tie into the further stories in the galaxy, you know, that we know of. So those are our thoughts on Crosshair and his journey. So we got some more Bad Batch discussion coming right after this. Stay right there.
You're not gonna get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff.
Mama!
Like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
You must sever the connection hinge! Now!
Not until you're up here.
There is no time, Wrecker. Plan 99.
Don't you do it, Jack.
When have we ever followed orders?
When the railcar system used to escape gets damaged from an explosion, Tech sacrifices his life to save his squad in one of the most gripping and heart-wrenching moments of the entire season. Bryan, I can't believe you made me watch that scene again.
I know.
It's so brutal.
Yeah, and like we were just talking about throughout this whole episode of this show, as far as like Tech, specifically Tech, but how that character has grown throughout the season to really bring us to this moment, for us to really feel that sacrifice that he ultimately gives.
I thought these were cartoons.
I know, right?
I thought these were for kids.
I know,
and
right?
I'm crying. I'm watching Tech plummet to his doom.
Oh, goodness.
But you know, the Clone Wars, there was real death in the Clone Wars. There's real death in the Bad Batch. The stakes are very high for these shows. And when you get to Tech's sacrifice, you could sense it coming. You couldn't believe it was coming.
Yeah.
But again, in hindsight, when you look at this whole season, they were really building to this moment with Tech. And it is a payoff. It is a profound payoff. and I'm deeply saddened to see him go.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious to see what happens with the batch after this moment.
Yeah, it's a heartbreaking moment to watch in the show, but I like what it does narratively for the show moving forward, going into season 3. Even what happens in the aftermath of this episode when they take refuge back at Sid's place, and then ultimately what Sid does, to betray the Bad Batch, and then ultimately what happens when Omega is captured, and where that's taking everything going into season 3. So narratively, I like the choices, even though I would love to have our full group together. I would love to have Tech alive and Crosshair with the group.
But I think we are going to get Crosshair back with the group, right?
I think so.
And we're probably going to get a few more additions to the Clone Force 99 based on what we see at the end of this episode. Omega has a sister, a clone sister.
Yeah.
That is wild. But at the same time, where The Mandalorian has always been so focused on the plot stuff and the big lore stuff, Bad Batch, ever since the first episode with Omega, and you're like, oh, what's the deal with this female child clone? Oh, is this going to be a mystery box show? Like, I remember thinking like, oh, they're going to drag that out. And over the course of the first season of The Bad Batch and over the course of the second season of The Bad Batch, the bigger plot stuff is, it takes a backseat to, again, what we've been talking about, the emotion and the character.
The story and the character. And it has really made Omega a character that we have come to know and love and want to see more of. And I guess now we can kind of transition into the future of Star Wars and what we're looking forward to, because we know Omega is going to play a big part into season 3 of the Bad Batch.
The final season, just announced at Star Wars Celebration.
The final season. And Dave Filoni being a part of this and knowing now that he's culminating not just the shows, the live action shows, but everything he's been involved with. He's culminating that into a film. Can we see an adult Omega live action? Will we see a live action Rex, old man Rex?
I think we're going to see a live action Bad Batch. I think we're going to see a lot of live action people who began their lives as cartoons. And I'm very excited about that. I've liked what we've seen so far with Ahsoka making the jump to The Mandalorian.
Oh, absolutely.
Zeb making the jump to The Mandalorian. The Ahsoka trailer is one of the best trailers I've seen this year.
Yeah.
My excitement for the Ahsoka series is, whoa.
I know.
It's out of 10.
Yes.
I am cautiously optimistic about some of the other features that Star Wars is putting out. I don't know if I'm totally sold on everything that was announced at Star Wars Celebration, but for me, as long as we keep getting Star Wars animated shows of this quality, I'll be really, really happy and satisfied.
Same. I'm looking forward to Bad Batch Season 3, and I like how it's tying into the live-action series with Ahsoka and possibly The Mandalorian. We don't know much about Skeleton Crew, but knowing that is part of this new Republic universe that Dave Filoni is building towards this feature film, I'm excited for that. And then even everything that's outside of this particular storyline with the Acolyte and even with the announcement of the Dawn of the Jedi film.
I'm really excited about Star Wars Visions, the second season of that.
Oh, goodness.
We're going to be getting all these little short Star Wars stories from various animation houses. The first season of Star Wars Vision is some of the most visually arresting Star Wars cinema that we've ever gotten.
And this looks like it's taking it up, but not like times 10.
Yeah.
I mean, this looks, volume 2 looks amazing, and I cannot wait. We might have to review that here.
Yeah, and we're going to get some Tales of the Jedi, more Tales of the Jedi also.
Looking forward to that.
Like, to me, I think I've said it already, but the best Star Wars is animated. And if you are not watching Clone Wars, Rebels, Bad Batch, Visions, Tales of the Jedi, you are missing some of the best Star Wars.
Easily. You're missing a lot of that. And I love how I don't want to say I love, because I mean the films have made some major missteps, especially with the sequel trilogy, but the animated shows have done a lot of heavy lifting to really kind of fill in those gaps.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I love the prequels now is because of the Clone Wars series, right? Like the context that the Clone Wars brought to the prequels makes me appreciate what George Lucas was doing with those films. And so I think there's an opportunity to enhance the sequel trilogy with some animated material.
Yeah, let's keep that. Let's keep that going. So, Yeah, there you go. Those are our thoughts on The Bad Batch Season 2. I think it's easy to say that B+.
Oh, yeah.
Easily a B+ for this season. Definitely check this out, currently streaming on Disney+. So, thank you for joining us on this latest episode of B&B Movie Reviews. Come be a part of the conversation. If you have questions, suggestions, feel free to email us at bnbmoviereviews@gmail.com. And with that, we'll see you at the movies.